Hi, everyone. Welcome to our Real Books presented by our Real Mental Health Initiative, which is in its 10th year here at Congregation Rodef Sholom.
Yay.
Amazing.
Our Real Mental Health Initiative, the goal is to reduce and end the isolation and stigma of mental illness and recovery and addiction. And we do that in lots of different ways. But we know that one of the most effective ways we do that is by sharing our stories. Sharing stories of pain and struggle, and by modeling that, like Rabbi Stacy was just saying, and by sharing that and making it okay for others to do the same, that is the most effective way we do that. And we do that with our speakers, but we do that with these amazing book talks. And Julie has been a part of those book talks as the interviewer, and now she's going to be the interviewee, which is super cool. And this year for our book talk, it's amazing that both books we presented, Penny, where are you? Both books we presented are books written by our congregants. And as I said at Penny's book review, and I will say again, it's you're being vulnerable and brave and opening yourself up and your story up so that we can all do that too. And so we appreciate that. And we appreciate you being here to listen and to take it in and to be inspired. And I know we're going to have more of a conversation at the end of this. So thank you for doing this. Thank you to the Laszlo and Tauber Family Foundation that underwrites a Real Mental Health Initiative.
Are we on?
We are on, Rabbi.
But it's red.
But it's red, she says. Are we on? Spencer, are we on? Yes? Someone says we're on, so I'm going to hope that we're
excellent.
on. And I'm going to hand it over to both of you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, I forgot, I don't need that, I have this.
You have it.
Welcome, everybody. It's so wonderful to be here together. Thank you, Julie, for writing a book so we could be here. And I want to also acknowledge that Cantor David and Marnie are here, and we're so glad.
I know. Am I on?
Yeah, you're on.
I was saying that, I was like, it's almost worth it to get Cantor David back in the house to write a book.
And now that, it's almost been 6 months, Cantor David and Marnie will start coming around a little bit more. And I'm going to invite people to turn off your phones. I'm going to invite people to silence or turn off your phones. And
Thank you for sitting there.
and because part of what we do in the Mental Health Initiative and also through your book is to allow ourselves to be real and vulnerable, I just have to say that I spent part of the day with a family with a very tragic loss, a father of a 7-year-old and 2 3-year-old twins. And I've been with them today. And so I'm feeling a little sad and heavy, heavy and sad. And I don't want you to think I'm not having fun with Julie, but I'm bringing that with me here. And I know that this community will surround them with love, and I don't want to bring any kind of pallor here, and this is just life. People die, and this 7-year-old little boy, if I can just share this, it was so beautiful. Like, we did a little Shiva, and I said, would you like to sing a song? And first we sang Hine Ma Tov, and then he said, I have another one. I said, what is it? And he said, the Macarena. And I said, great. And he said, everybody do it with me. And he said, whatever the words are, yeah, la 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 la, da 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 da. I'm feeling so much better. Hey, Macarena. So we did that at Shiva today.
She is so talented.
And
is there anything you don't do?
well, I don't know the words, but he taught me the motions. I want to share, it's like the sadness and the grief and the Macarena and the love, and the whole world goes around. So I'm already feeling better just from your presence here. So thank you for letting me share that. It's part of the stew, part of the goulash.
It is, and actually,
I know you like goulash.
I love goulash, and actually, I feel like that this is the perfect book for the day then, because this really is about all of it.
It is. So, it's one thing to have all of us who have been able to hear your incredible drash a few years ago at the High Holidays, where you talked about Danny.
Right.
And then I read the book, and then I got to read it again in preparation for today. And more than any of that is to know you over all these years. And we all know you because you're Julie Fingers. And so we all know you. And one thing that was so amazing in the book is that it was truly your voice. And so I want to start by talking about the block, because it seems like such a powerful theme. in the story and in your life. And I know you faced that block and you opened up that block.
Right.
Does your block have a name? Did you give it a name?
I didn't give it a name.
It doesn't, yeah.
No.
So could you tell us what its role is in your life now? How, since going through this and writing the book, where are you with that?
I think it's funny because it's so strange. I think when you start a book, you don't, first of all, I'm a journalist, so I had never written a book and I never had intended to write a book. So I didn't really realize going in what the timeline was. So I finished this book 2 years ago. And so it's so funny because now people are reading it now. So everyone's like, oh, it's so good. You're all good. Your dreams came true and there's no more committee and one of the learnings has been like, that's just not really how life is. Like everything doesn't, like nothing resolves everything, which I kind of probably should have known, but I think it's a little bit like I think one of the things I've learned is just that it's kind of like, I know we're not supposed to talk about weight in this day and age, but for the people who do struggle, and you think like, oh, if I just lost 20 pounds, like everything would be different. And then you do, and you're like, oop, turns out I'm still me, and it's a different size, but it's just, so I think with the block, I think the role it plays now with writing is that it's still hard for me to write, but I've done it now on a different level. But it still surprises me the extent to which it's still hard for me to sit down and do it. And I think, in terms of writing, what I've learned is that I had to give myself permission to write in my own way. And I think one of the lessons for me, and I think just for anybody, is that I think we tend to be taught to live in a certain way, do things in a certain way. And certainly if for anybody who's a writer or trying to be a writer, you know that thing where they're like, well, if you just wake up at 7 a.m. and you wear a scarf and you light a candle, but you got to do 1,000 words. And oh my God, I lived like in that prison for so long. And then I found out like, oh, it turns out I can just not do any of that. And actually that's the only way I can do it. So I kind of am a binge writer. And then, so I really wrote this book over 2 years, over 6 years. And then it took 2 years, the agent, whatever. And it was really just in spurts of every few months, I would go away for 4 or 5 days, which was like a really lucky thing for me to be able to do, and write. And that was just like, I'd never heard of being able to do that. And then I learned that Cheryl Strayed, like one day I heard Cheryl Strayed, who wrote Wild, was like, oh, well, and I'm a binge writer. And I was like, I believe I invented that. Uh-huh. But so anyway, it was very validating to know that.
Yes.
I wish she had told me that sooner, so I had permission. But anyway, long answer to that question.
Yeah. How many people here know Julie? Like her story and all that?
This is the good thing about a community.
Okay, so it's interesting
Yeah,
because
now you do. Now you all
didn't introduce you or anything because I just figure we all know, but maybe for the few people who, people who haven't read the book, I'm not going to ask who you are. You share this story a bit, but I remember because our kids were in preschool together, and I remember at the time you were not yet members of the synagogue. And I remember, Dave, you'll probably remember, because you remember everything, is that your brain's so good.
Thank God.
Is that we were at the Contemporary Jewish Museum.
Yes.
The Friedmans and the Fingers Rudnicks, and I remember your family was there. And I thought, God, I wish they were our friends. And I did. I was like,
that's what people say about you, just so you know.
They're such a wonderful family, and they're so happy, and they're so wonderful. I wish you were in the synagogue, and we could spend time together. And like, you never know what somebody's story is. You never know. And I feel so privileged that I get to know a lot of people's stories, and you never know. There's so much projection, right, that we have that, this person has it all together and they've had no hardships in their life and all this sort of thing. And I think that one of the extraordinary elements of the book is you're giving permission to the rest of us to own,
Yeah.
our troubles and the darkness in our life. And so how has it changed your journey to have talked about it, to have written
Right.
the book? How has it changed where you place everything that you've been carrying?
Yeah, it's so interesting because someone came to me before the event and said, thank you for permission, of being honest. And it's so interesting because so many people have said like, oh, you're so brave, it's so courageous. It's I feel ambivalent about that because it's sad. It's a sad comment in our society that just telling the truth is brave. That's sad. And Dave and I were on our way here, and this is like I'm doing a lot of book events, but this is different than any of them because you're my community. And what's so ironic is that I said to Dave, it's so interesting how I came to California, for those who maybe heard that, my drosh a few years ago.
And please feel free to fill in some of the holes around this, like fill in the story a little.
So we came, Dave and I really just came for a year for a fellowship of his. We're coming from the East Coast. And that was our plan, was just to be here a year. And for a variety of reasons, we stayed. But one of the things that was such a relief to me and the appeal of it was to start over without anyone knowing my past. Not because I was ashamed of it, but because it's just burdened me. And I'm from Kansas City, and who's read the book? Did you already ask this, and I've already forgot?
I didn't
Who's
ask.
read the book? I don't want to ruin it. Okay, you probably know what kind of happens, so. But
Yeah,
okay.
maybe you can share.
Yeah. Okay, so it's 3 stories basically that have been woven together. It's the story of my brother and me as a sister and a daughter growing up. My story and how my 50th year, I kind of was in a crisis, secretly, not really understanding it, on the brink of our empty nest, and what I felt was this very distasteful feeling of envy for our daughter, which was like anathema to me. And I knew that there was something wrong. That was my daughter's my life. She's so beloved. I knew it was like a canary in the coal mine. And then life unfolded, and Jessie got sick.
Your daughter.
Our daughter, her first weekend, or drop-off weekend of college. And so that's the 3rd story, is Jessie's story. And the way it kind of is woven together is how just the sort of meshing of our stories, and how when Jessie got sick, that feeling that parents have of you just want to save your kids. You want to take away their pain. I mean, the jealousy went way out the window, and it was like, I would have done anything to switch with her so that it could have been me, and I know Dave would have too. And it, dealing with her illness started to bring forward the memories of my brother and all those years as his sister, and that feeling of wanting to save him, and what I did to do that, and my role in the family unwittingly, and how it didn't work. And eventually, as it unfolded, I won't tell you the thing, but it was like it all came together. And it's funny because if you read the book, I'd actually be really curious we shouldn't talk about it here, but if people were like, how did you not realize that all these things were connected? How did you not know that? Because I look back now and I'm like, duh. How did I not understand that all those things were connected? But the subconscious is very powerful. Mm-hmm. And I didn't, and it had to unfold. I definitely forgot the original question. What was it? You also forgot it. Well, anyone can ask anything now.
We also wanted to hear, just for those of us who haven't read the book, a little bit. Do you want a little bit more? They want a little bit more.
So
daughter
our
herself
daughter, me, and my brother. But you know what I thought I might do? I thought I might read just my preface, part of my preface, which is, should I do that? It's like a few minutes. It's like 3 or 4 minutes.
Why don't you do that? And I think also
as a setup. So that people kind of understand that.
And Mark, and for others who may not know this story, I think what is public, and I think it's good to say
now I
that,
remember your question.
I
really want to answer that.
Julie did speak at the holiday. It's not one of those books, there's not like a spoiler alert, because they've already been spoiled and alerted, right, through what you said. So
sorry about that.
A lot
shouldn't
is,
have come if you didn't.
A lot is about your brother and his journey, his illness, his mental illness, and ultimately what happens to him in your relationship with him, which is precious, really precious. So can you just say 3 sentences about his journey, just a little, just what was that? Just the shot.
Yeah.
So
when he was 14, first of all, I feel like when I read this is all going to come to, but I do want to just answer that question briefly and finish what I started. This is when you have ADD, you eventually get to your point. Which, by the way, in case you asked, the hardest part of writing this book was writing this book while having ADHD. And actually, when I finished writing it, our son Sam, wrote to me, and he understood in a way, because he also has it, we all have it, you probably have it too, you just don't know. And he was like, Mom, I am in awe. I am in awe that you finished it. And like for me, that was like the biggest part.
Is that what Amazon said? By Sam Rudnick. I'm in awe that you actually finished it.
It was like, forget People magazine, forget all the, I was that I finished it. Anyway, but I want to finish the question. So we came here, and for me, the best part of coming to California was escaping my past. I was like, no one knows anything. In Kansas City, I am Danny's sister. I am Pella and Jack's daughter. We're known, it's a small Jewish community. In Boston, no one had known where we were before. We'd lived there Dave's from there, but we lived there for 6 years, and no one even knew I had a brother. There was no reason for them to, and then all of a sudden, he died, and that's the problem with family secrets, is that when that happens, is all of a sudden, like, no one even knew I had a brother, and suddenly, obviously he was young, and I felt like I had to say what it was, and then, so that was trauma. That was its own trauma. So coming to California was like, nobody, in California, everybody's at camp. Like, most people don't even have their in my world, like, most of you, like, very few people are native, and it's just like nobody asks about your family, and it's just like it was such a dream. And I was saying to Dave how ironic it is that I'm coming here today, and to talk about a book that really I couldn't have written had I not been part of this community, that gave me the safety and strength, and being on our High Holiday Committee, where there was like just a sense of intimacy, and the culture here at Rodef Sholom, where it is okay to tell the truth, that I really felt like I could. And so it's so ironic that, like, here I am coming back to the community that I came to escape, and yet you're the ones, really, Rodef Sholom, and your leadership and the clergy really is the foundation for me doing it. So anyway,
read
I'm gonna read it. Okay.
I will help to.
You'll help to keep me on track.
I'll be your human Ritalin.
Yeah.
Yes.
Please. Let me just say, many people have tried. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I know this sounds fishy coming from the author of a memoir, but I don't like talking about myself. I figure I'm with myself all day long. What I want to know is, what about you? That's always interesting to me. I'm also a little phobic about all eyes on me because I was raised to believe that personal privacy is sacred. What happened to Danny, which is how my family often refers to my little brother's life story, has always been private. It was a 14-year odyssey that began 40 years ago, but few people will have known about it until they read this book. Any reader whose family member has coped or is now coping with any kind of serious personal struggle, mental illness, medical illness, addiction, will understand all too well how this could happen, how a story like this one could unfold year after year under the noses of everyone around, including closest friends, extended family, neighbors, roommates, and coworkers, without their knowledge and without anyone in the family turning to them for support. People walking a path of living with or supporting loved ones who struggle will also nod their heads and understand why this would happen. At the time, we fervently believed that keeping our family's privacy airtight was best for everyone. Mostly, we thought we were protecting Danny. We were certain that one day he would find his way to the other side of his struggle, and we wanted him to be able to return to life free of baggage, without the weight of judgment from everyone from friends and community members to potential employers. No doubt it was simply easier for us if people didn't know what was happening. We didn't know what was happening. And since, to the outside world, we were the kind of family pictured on a Raisin Bran box, our odyssey was easily concealed. Things like this did not happen to people like us. No psychiatric hospitals for us, thank you. And by the time things became serious, our thinking was that most people were just making conversation when they asked about how Danny was doing or where he was living. Who wants to have a bomb dropped at a tea party? Then, decades later, a different something happened. But this time, I wasn't a sister, I was a mother, and it was my own child whose life suddenly careened off track. Like Danny, it was a confusing, scary reality to navigate, let alone talk about. The path forward seemed obvious in the exact same way. This is no one's business. It took life throwing brick after brick at my head to finally realize the profound and generational cost of family secrets. That's why I wrote this book. But I need you to know, this is my story. It's extraordinary enough that my parents and older brother gave me their full and loving permission to write what they knew my soul yearned to understand the only way I knew how. In return, I've done my very best to share my heart without exposing theirs. My brother Danny's part in Stay is for everyone struggling to help loved ones plagued by mental illness and to light the way for those of us left behind if the battles are lost. My daughter Jessie's part in Stay is intended to give voice to the legions of people who cope with the isolating, often invisible veil of chronic medical illness. And my part in Stay, my wrestling match with the empty nest, midlife ghosts of buried dreams, the twin pillagers of self-judgment and fear, well, you're holding it in your hands. May my family's story entertain and inspire you to perhaps look at your own life's trajectory and path forward with new eyes. So, thank you. So that's it.
So for those who have read the book, or even from the few minutes of talking so far when you said, may our family's story inspire and entertain, what else has it done for you? Inspire, entertain, and what else? Say again? Comfort.
Thank you.
Really, you give permission not just to speak all of the things.
Well, hang on, we're going to get you the microphone so everybody can hear. And I'm asking because it more than has inspired and entertained. It's so interesting you chose those words. Connect, we heard, comfort.
I was just going to say, you have given permission to women, as moms, parents, spouses, whomever, to not only go through all the things that we go through, but you have somehow paved a way to figure out how to live your life in and amongst past trauma, current trauma, perhaps future trauma. and still figure out how to be and how to be yourself in that. And I think sorry, I'm hijacking this, but
No, please
your
go
book hit
on.
home on so many levels, and I mean, I just turned 50. There's trauma, there's mental health, there's colitis, there's kids with stuff, there's motherhood, everything. I mean, I relate to so many of the things.
Yeah.
But I have never read a book, and I love memoir, so I read a lot of them, that has ever just given voice to that.
So
And
nice.
it's just it has shaped me and changed me, and I am like
Wow.
beyond grateful. So, thank you.
Thank you.
That's enormous, enormous.
Thank you so much.
Anybody else? It's entertained, inspired. Let's have Ken and then Deborah.
Oh my God, this is great.
It gives,
I don't need to say anything.
it gives you permission, and at the same time, to be not so closely within yourself, to talk to others in a way that it's honest.
Mm-hmm.
I said something to a congregant last night whose son is autistic. I said, well, how's he doing? And she cried.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She cried because she said no one is able to say anything about it. And I think that
You mean no one acknowledges him?
even people know,
Yeah.
just not happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But this gives people permission to let them be human.
Nice.
Thank
Nice.
you.
So important. And then we'll come to Deborah over here.
I'd say provoke.
Nice.
I.
Here, Deborah has. Oh, I'm sorry. I
It
didn't
just
realize you're
made
still
me
talking.
Think about how we show up in
Yeah.
society. How do we respond to people that are going through things? Do we really want to know? And when we know, what do we do with that information?
Right.
How do we support people or not? What does it do to us when we hear something that's uncomfortable? What way do we walk through the world that needs to shift to be more inclusive, embracing, to really see people, hear people? Why the fear? Thank you.
Nice. Thank you. And Deborah over here.
Thank you, Petey.
I think for me, the two words that came to mind are understanding, to understand, and then to empathize.
Yes.
Because you just, as you said, you never know what's going on, behind the curtain
Mhm.
or back at home for anyone, really.
Never. All right, let's hold off now. We'll get back to questions in a minute. Thank you for all these. I thought it was important to expand those words
That's
because I
so
think
nice.
you underestimated yourself in
Thank
there.
you. Thank you.
So there are three primary stories, but I think there are many other stories. One story, just a minor theme, is on the meaning of life, really. So there's two quotes you make which are fascinating. So you talked about how to live your life. It's a story about life and what's the point of it all. And it's a question you ask through it all.
Mhm.
I don't think it was in an existential, like to be or not to be, but it was really, we're here. What is this all about? And I love what the kid's Latvian babysitter Frida said.
Yeah.
She says, we're all running to the grave. We are running to the grave, but she said it in an accent.
Yeah.
Which yeah. And then also how Fillmore said, you said, Fillmore, I need to take a picture of you. I say, as if a picture of him in his deathbed will help me later. You do that, sweetheart. And then you say, Fillmore, tell me again, what's the meaning of life? And he said, baby, you've always been searching. You remember what I told you, right? Just to live, baby, to really live. And you said, I know. And I love that these two people in your life were family of choice and people who supported you.
Yeah.
And that you have these other people. So it's also a story about the meaning of life. And do you want to say anything about that? Because that ran through everything.
Yeah, no, it did. Because I think, I mean, so on the eve of 50, these things were happening inside of me. I mean, as I say in the book, I just was one of the, like, I don't remember what the Woody Allen movie was where like, what was it? Was it Manhattan where Alfie was like, Mom, but the planet is going to explode. And she was like, Alfie, you're 9 years old. Go play. I was just like one of those kids. Anyone who knows me is not going to be shocked by that. And so, yeah, when I was young, I just was like, I don't get it. Like school's is kind of dumb. Like how are we supposed to do all this? You know, like what is it that you're choosing?
Hmm.
And and so that I never got the answer to that. And I guess, and so Fillmore said, just to live, baby. And I was sort of like, that's ridiculous. Like that is obviously not the answer. Like that's lazy. That's not ambitious. And I think that what I've learned is that it changes with life, but been so fascinating and surprising about this book journey. I hate the word journey, but I guess no one's figured out another word for it. But is that even this is like really pushing me in ways that I didn't expect. That like what is success and what are the false gods? And, maybe it was 20 pounds a few years ago. And now it was like, I just want to be able to finish the book. That would be a miracle. And then it was like, I finished the book and I was like, well, I guess now I'm going to just like, I'm trying to be a writer. I guess I'll try to get an agent. And that was like an impossible feat for a person who had been out of the game for decades. And somehow by a miracle, I got an agent. And then it was like, and it kept going. And then it was like, oh, and I got a publisher and all these things, which are, I mean, honestly, like it's a big deal and it was unlikely to happen. And with each notch, what I noticed was, I think I was telling you or someone about this, I just heard this phrase coined, the arrival fallacy.
Mhm.
And I thought, oh, this is so unfortunate. Like, none of it's going to do it, none of it's going to do it. And now it's like, I feel like I'm in a Hallmark movie where I was like, oh, the answer the whole time was like being on the beanbag with the dogs and Dave, like all hugging, like that was actually the answer. And now that I've done all this other stuff, I can go back to that. Okay, I'm not going to just do that. Don't worry. But the point is, that it does, I think, as Jews, as people, we just are always searching, and I will always search. And I do think the meaning changes with your life. And as a parent, you've got to figure out what the new meaning is, whether you work or don't work. And anyway, it's a moving target.
Yeah.
I think I really understand. I don't really know Buddhism, but I get it now. I get that Buddha's thing was that, right? Wasn't the thing that he had everything and then he gave everything up. I get that. I'm more and more, I get that. Because, okay, let me just say this one other thing about this is that as an author, it's a weird thing that like suddenly you're in a new race. Like there's a new race to the top. I was never in that world. I was in the journalist world, and then I was in the mommy world, and then I was, and suddenly I'm in the author world. And okay, I have to be afraid of what I'm saying because I know there are authors out there watching. And it's so interesting because that's a whole nother set of like ladders. And then you have to choose which matter. And then you get to our age when like so many people are getting sick and are struggling. And then, and then you hear where you were this morning and you have these signs that like none of this external stuff really matters, but where's the ego in it and what? So anyway, as you can see, I continue my search, but
And you see right here, right? This is our ladder of Jacob. There's only one
Yeah.
ladder.
yeah, maybe that's
right.
the-
It's the ladder between heaven and earth, whatever heaven is, right?
Yeah.
Whatever heaven is, it just really means like the essence of holiness to me. That's what it means without the trappings of any other ladder.
Yeah.
No other ladder. It's just the essence of holiness. And
Yeah.
that ultimately is the ladder that matters. Oh, good bumper sticker.
that was really good,
Yeah.
Stacy.
That's really the only ladder that matters.
Except for that, isn't it interesting that we live in America where no one tells you that. No one really sanctions that.
No. Well, I want to get back to that whole idea that the ladder of success. And one of my favorite scenes in the book is the Target scene. I loved it. And it's very interesting. Julie and I were talking the other day in preparation for today, and I actually marveled and was a little surprised.
Yeah.
And I told you this about your drive and your maybe self-criticism about
Maybe.
about taking care of your kids. and being out of the professional work world. And I remember years ago, we had a speaker here and my kids were little and I think I'd just become senior rabbi. And she mentioned this beautiful image of the woman in the office building, like who's an executive, and the woman coming in with her kid drooling on her shoulder. And they're in that, the turns, not the turns, like the door that goes like this. And they look at each other and they both envy each other.
Yeah.
Like, oh, look, I wish I held the baby with schmutz on my arm for 12 hours
Right.
a day. And the woman doing that said, oh, I wish I had a nice fancy office and all this. And so when you talked about Target, and
Mhm.
it's like, what am I doing in Target when my kid has this amazing job and I'm in Target? And it's like all I want to do is go to Target. And I hope one day
That's
I
what you want to
I
do?
will have time to go to Target. And really, it's like a dream come true. And then you felt bad going to Target. And it is so interesting how we view ourselves and look at others. And
Well, I think
Yeah.
especially someone like you who has never, you know,
I have gone to Target before.
so
No.
I think I've seen you there. But it is so interesting how we all live in our separate worlds and see things so differently. And can I read this
Will you read it to
paragraph?
us? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to read this paragraph.
It's delicious.
So it was, it was me and I was staying home with Jesse and I had before that this like really intense job as a founding executive director of a nonprofit. And I didn't know if I should stay home. And then I just knew, I didn't know I had ADD back then. Now I understand why that would be so hard to do both well. But I just didn't trust myself that if I was lucky enough to have a choice, and I didn't trust that if I continued my job, that I wouldn't ever go home because I just was so driven with work. So, but right off the bat, there were little arrows pointing to how eventually it was headed secretly south. I had landed in a surreal alternate reality that had seemingly sprung up in Technicolor overnight. One day, I worked a very respectable job with an office and a business card and a title and people who were waiting to talk to me. I'd been spearheading community projects, meeting with CEOs, sharing an event stage with Secretary of State Colin Powell, fielding questions from the press. And now I sat cross-legged in a circle of new mothers, singing Ring Around the Rosie with a drooling baby on my lap. Now I was Jesse's mom, walking around with little cascades of dried vomit down my shirt. It was clear before I was many things: executive director, writer, strategic planner, program developer, fundraiser, community leader. Now I was one thing. I lived in a 7-day-a-week world of sing-songy, high-pitched tones. Conversations were limited to baby talk, days of all the same thing, caregiving. No matter how I sliced it or how much I loved being with Jesse, a stay-at-home mom was a fraught designation. And I just have to finish because then I want to hear what you have to say this. A few months into the gig, in a desperate effort to have a conversation that didn't include sleep schedules and mortifyingly named products like my breast friend. Remember that, ladies? My breast friend. I was like, oh my God, this was definitely a man who made up that name. I called up one of my former board members to say hello. Jim answered with a warm, familiar voice. We'd worked together for years. Hey, Jim, I said, heart lifting at the sound of my old life. Ah, it's Julie Finger, she laughed with a breezy edge. Back from the dead? My heart stopped. Did he really just say that? Back from the dead? My mind replayed it. Yes, he did. I didn't die, Jim, I said a little too loudly. I'm just home taking care of my daughter for a while. Oh, of course, he said quickly. Most important job in the world. There it was, the fake marketing campaign for motherhood, subverted by society's real opinion on the matter. So, does anyone relate who's been at home with their kids? Okay, only a few people are going to be blind. But anyway,
Yeah.
I think if unless you've been a full-time stay-at-home mom and people are like, what do you do? And you used to have a real answer to that.
Right.
And then there's like some other paragraph that I know a lot of women related to. It was like a hand grenade because you didn't know how to answer that question. Because if you say, I'm home with my kids, that's just, it's a whole thing. It's a
Yeah.
whole, you're dismissed. I mean, on some level,
It's-
you are. So
You're
anyway,
dismissed. No, you're dismissed.
you just are, you
Well,
just are.
Yeah.
And by the way, the juxtaposition between the way, I was treated then
Mhm.
and the way I had been treated when I was a journalist or now, it's two different worlds. It just is. I don't know what the answer is.
Very interesting.
So
And in those two worlds, I'm so glad to see that you're still you. Right. And
I've
you're
just, I think that might be code for I didn't dress up, which is, it's true. And Rodef Sholom lets us be that.
Mhm.
And it, yeah.
So I have a few more questions
yeah.
and then we'll open it up. to
Yeah, I
questions.
don't know what.
I also want to acknowledge Amy Peel is here, who was a multi-time published author. So Amy, yes, welcome.
What?
A congregant and has written some incredible mysteries and other books. Anybody else? And Penny, we already mentioned Penny. We did. Anybody else?
we
Because I know you mentioned Penny, so I had to mention Amy. Betsy, Mazel Tov. That's tremendous. So I love when you talk about the evolution of and Nancy Peckner. Oh my
Nancy
gosh.
Peckner.
Nancy Peckner. Yes. There you are. Yes. Beautiful. And
Yeah.
and your book came out about 2 years ago, which is phenomenal. 1.5 years ago.
So
which is
much
phenomenal.
talent. at the
So much
Rodef Sholom.
talent here with these incredible stories. Thank you, Nancy. I love the evolution of you as a writer and how you, I asked, the first question was at the block because it was so fascinating about what, in the committee and
Yeah.
those voices here. Julie speaks so poignantly about this committee, about those voices in your head. And I get that voice sometimes. And I just really quickly, I remember one time before the high holidays and there was a sermon and there was one person's face who I saw. It's like, what are they going to think? And they're going to judge and and I spoke about some social justice that involved your orphanage. And at the end, he made a contribution to you. And I thought, oh, my
Thank
committee
God.
liked it, so. Well, so I'm wondering about the committee, if you can speak about it to
Yeah.
people who haven't read yet, and also have the voices changed?
Yeah.
Better, worse?
Yeah, that's so interesting. Okay, one of the most surprising things that's happened is that I was at a book club the other day and someone mentioned that in the committee and there were a few people who were like, oh, I don't have that. And I was like, what?
Does everybody
And
understand
actually
what we mean
that
by
happened at
committee?
dinner the other day. I was like, I'm sorry, come on. And then we said like, who has a committee? Or who doesn't have a committee? And so many people raised their hands. And I was like, I needed a brain transplant, obviously. Like, what? I mean, I literally, to me, how does a person go through life without a narrator? And I'm not asking rhetorically, how does a person go through life? Cindy? Yeah, you were one of them. I was like, what's wrong with you? Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, we talked for hours. And that was really one of the most amazing moments, obviously for you, but for so many of us, because there were clearly, I say women because it was women, there were clearly women who really do not experience that whole doubt thing. And there were other people
Yeah.
like myself and you who were like, are you kidding? I mean,
Seriously.
by 4 o'clock every day, I'm railing at myself. What did you do to me?
Wait, 4 o'clock? It
Oh,
takes
yeah.
that long?
The whole thing. But
What?
no, but I mean,
Not when
there
you
were-
wake up in the morning and
there
look
were
in the mirror.
people-
Oh.
there were people, and surprisingly,
Yeah,
who those people were.
it
who
was.
Absolutely don't experience.
Wait, and how about Marcy
That's
Dollinger?
what I'm talking
And I'm
about.
just gonna say it out loud
Marcy-
because she was
Marcy
like,
doesn't-
I have a committee.
That
It's a
says-
cheerleading
it's a
committee.
cheerleading
I
committee.
was like,
That was her committee.
what? I'm like, luckily I love you already
said
because
the thing-
I would hate you. I mean, I was like, what
The
kind of
thing
alien are
stuck
you?
up on her wall was, you've got this. And I
Yes.
thought that would be the last thing on.
Can we just take a brief survey?
Do you want to find out by gender? Is that where you're going?
I would love
I knew
to.
it.
But wait, are people gonna be honest, Ed Grossman? Are you gonna be honest? I wanna know the men in the room,
It's male or female
male or female,
identified.
we're going to do men first.
Identified.
And please just be honest. We will worship you if you don't have one. We just want to know, men, do you have a committee?
That critiquing committee.
Okay, now the rest of the men, raise your hand. Wait, keep your hands up so we know, because anyone, okay, most of you? See, Fred Green. Fred Green doesn't have he knows exactly what he's doing at all times. It's great.
Oh,
What did he say?
what? He said, I don't need a committee. I have Joanne.
Oh,
Okay. And what
True.
about, do you want to ask?
yes. And women, okay, we're going to do it easier. Raise your hand if you don't have a committee.
Ella doesn't have a committee.
Okay, and now put your hands down and you're not a woman,
No
Bruce.
committee.
Okay, and raise your hand if you do have a committee. You have two.
Oh my
Okay.
gosh, I love
Isn't
it.
that interesting?
I love it.
Yeah, it's so fast. Wait, and can I just relate? I'm sorry, can I
This
tell
is
my?
our time.
Okay, the other thing that was so fascinating is it at the book passage, which was the first event. This was so fascinating. Diane Provost said her favorite line in the book was something like, it was, I was coming back from Montana and I was like, why? I went to a writing retreat and it was like, I could write. It was like the second I got to that writing retreat, it just
That's what
came
I'm just
from
gonna
me.
read.
Were you going to read that
Okay,
line?
I don't know what
Were you gonna
line.
And she said, and then I was like, I don't understand. Like for decades I've been blocked, but here I was in a room with like just me, not as a mother, not as a wife, but just as a student. Nobody knew me and I could write. And then I said something like, why couldn't I access myself in the company of others?
Yeah.
And the entire room at Book Passage applauded because that is how much women felt it. And I was like, are any men applauding? But they weren't. Because I'm sure some men, I'm not saying, probably Ed Grossman, you're sensitive. So, but like maybe you were, no, not Rick. No, just kidding. But just that idea of not accessing and not being able to access yourself. It's
You
the
had to
same
go far away.
Yeah, I
in a
still
6-foot
do.
Snow.
No, I still
Let
do.
me read this.
Yeah, go ahead.
So it wasn't exactly what I was thinking, but right near it. So you're up at this writer's retreat in Montana and you had been blocked and you were talking about peeling layer after layer. And then
Yeah.
you said, like pure magic, my fingers flew across a real page with an ease I hadn't felt in years. Oh my God, look at this. Handwriting. I was still in there. Maybe the writer in me still did exist. And then you said, filled with possibility, like a great friend who promised to stay with me forever. And this idea that you said, maybe the writer in me still did exist.
Mhm.
So do you feel like there was a separation, it sounds like, and something in between the
Mhm.
Julie and the writer in you,
Mhm.
and that it was
Mhm.
kind of surprising, like it was outside yourself. Can you talk about that?
Well, it's so interesting because again, I finished the book 2 years ago and I started a Substack, which please everybody
Can you tell
subscribe.
everybody what that is?
Okay, I know it's so annoying that these writers say Substack like you're supposed to know. It's just like it's basically a word that it's a branding thing, but it's a lot of writers and political people and actors. Anybody can go on and write a Substack, which is basically like a blog. It's like a modern day blog, but the thing that's cool about it is when you sign up for one person's, you also, and it's free, or you can subscribe. They call it like an economic engine for culture or something, because a lot of people ask you to pay for a subscription. I don't, and people were mad at me for not, because
Oh,
like the whole
yes,
idea is,
they do.
but anyway, yeah, so that's called, my Substack is called Take My Advice, I'm Not Using It. So feel free to sign up, which is true. But there was a point. So I do, and yeah, sign up, because I don't really write that often, because again, I'm not writing that much. So what I have learned is that still, I'm like, what's it going to take for me to start doing my next thing? I'm sorry to tell you, I'm probably going to have to start binge writing again, because I can't. I can't. And I know that's really lucky and privileged that I can go and separate myself a little bit. But I think that I just, maybe that's an artist thing, like why writers are in like cabins or artists have to have studios. I find it really difficult to access my real voice and thoughts even when I'm in a space with other people. Does anyone else?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
You got to get to,
right.
right.
Ooh, wait, sorry.
So
Chris-
we're gonna take time for
Okay.
questions
Yeah,
now.
great.
We're gonna start here. Moji, thank you. And Tracy, do you have a mic too? Oh, good. If you can let us, and hello to people on Zoom. I know
Yeah,
there's a lot
thank
of
you
people on
for
Zoom. Thank you
coming.
for being there.
Anybody?
So you'll get the Zoom
Everybody.
questions. And maybe when you ask a question, if you could stand up and just say your name. So I think, Chris, do you have the microphone?
I don't have a question. I was just going.
And if,
to-
I'm sorry, the microphone needs to be about a quarter of an inch from your
Is it
mouth.
close enough?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
And my name is Chris Grossman. And Julie, just following up, Charles Dickens, who had 10 children, had to have his wife committed and he had to lock himself in his office, right, in order to get the space to write.
Thank
Because
you.
of the noise of those children and domestic life.
But I don't have 10 children. That's why I felt guilty.
Wow.
I think
But-
it probably started with his first child.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
You have a committee.
Yeah.
Hi, Julie. Deborah Stroll.
Hi.
Like you, I grew up in a community in the middle of the country where the Jewish community is very tight knit.
Mhm.
So I understand a lot of, why your family, dealt with your brother's death and the way they did. I'm curious, now that the book is out
Right.
and the Kansas City community
Mm.
Yeah.
knows a lot more than they
Right.
did. How is that and how is
Yeah.
that for your family that's there?
Mm.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, a lot of people have been asking like, oh, did you get permission? And of course I did. And at every stage and I feel like it's just been such an incredible, I don't know, it's hard to find language. It's such an act of love, how my family has supported me. And from the beginning, and they're different than me. They they didn't ask for it and they would never have, my parents are older, like they weren't looking to relive this thing that happened 30 years ago. But I think that they just knew that had been struggling for so long and not really understanding why. And so last weekend, actually, when we were back in Kansas City for Thanksgiving, my parents had an event and my mom like really insisted on doing it. And I had said to her at the time, Mom, I don't have to come back. I don't have to come to Kansas City. It doesn't have to be part of my book tour. For me, I carry like a lot, like I understand that it's got to be really strange for them and hard and not fun. And she was just like, no, this is your home. You need to, we want to, and we're proud and we want to celebrate you. So there were like 60 people came to our house and it was really surreal because a lot of those people I hadn't seen since my brother's funeral, which was the first time like anyone in that room besides like, my closest family and my very best friends knew anything. And then the rest of the people were just out there in the community, but it is a small community. But they came and it was such a, it was healing. I mean, I think it's just proof for those of you in the room who struggle with whether or not to tell the truth and who look at me and are like, that I'm so courageous. What I found was that afterwards, so many people came up to me, and Kansas City is like, it's a very refined town, the Jewish community there. And there were so many people who clearly had their own stories that they hadn't told and were so appreciative. beyond what they felt about my own family. So I think that, I think in a way it was healing because, I mean, this was a nice thing to be able to do. I was able to, I think I was telling probably Stacy, like, it was like taking the elephant that had been in the room in my family's life in Kansas City. Like, Danny died, we had the funeral. If you read the book, just like, I was the one who gave the eulogy. I, said a lot of baseline things of what had happened, but that was it. Like, no, there was no reason to be chatting about it, and it enabled, I think the book kind of enabled us to almost celebrate it, like bring it out and celebrate it. And I think that it was kind of in a way helpful for a lot of the people in there who had clearly like their own, I mean, I think another surprising thing is just like how many people I mean, so many of the people in this room have come up to me, my brother, my sister, my mother.
Mhm.
And I don't know how we change those norms, but of like, why is that so bad to tell the truth? But I feel like also Jesse, by the way, who started out having this be a secret, like, I think that the book, obviously, not just permission, she actually helped me to pull it apart, and she helped. She was like a great editor, and Dave. And I think initially it was really hard for her because she was, if you read in the book, like, she was so, before she got sick, I was saying to someone the other day, like, she was just so, she soared through life. Life was easy for her. She had friends, teachers loved her. Did well in school. She tested well. She got into the great school, all of it. And then all of a sudden she came to college, and on that first weekend she got sick, and all of a sudden she was like the kid who'd been in the hospital for the first week of school. And when she came out, she had missed the first week of school. She'd missed all the orientations, and she was suddenly known as like the sick kid. And like, that was, if they had met her 2 weeks before, she would have been like, she would have just been seen totally
She would have been the
differently.
president of everything by the first week.
Yeah, probably. And I think initially her, as I said in the preface, like, her reaction and that was like, just whatever you want, like, we didn't talk about it for a long time. And, but I think that the book, like, she grew with the book because I just took 6 years to write it. And every step of the way, she read the last draft, she took some of it out. But it's been, I guess I'm sharing this with you to say, for those of you who have kids, or those of you who struggle with your own illness, for her, it was scary to integrate those parts of her identity.
Mhm.
I think she felt forced to, and on a certain level, because just logistically, when you have, there was a time she had a bag, and she just like, like, how do you explain that you're going to the bathroom 20 times a day, or you have to sit in a certain place. And she's much better now, but I think it has been like so empowering to her to integrate it. And what's been interesting is the people who can't handle it are not part of her life. And the people who she would want to be part of her life are part of her life.
Mhm.
And I think for me, the same thing is true. Like, it is so weird that you all know something that I never would have told any of you.
Mhm.
But now that I have, it's easier for me in the world because it's just like,
Right. You don't have a mask on.
yeah, it's just easier. So I guess,
So Moji,
Yeah.
are there questions on
Yeah.
Zoom you want to ask?
There are, you've answered some of them already. There was a question about Jesse. I have a question from our other writer, Doreen Stock.
oh, hi, Doreen.
Hi, Doreen. Do you have a feeling of completion as a writer, or do you feel like having written this book opens you up to future books?
Mm.
That's so nice. Only a writer would ask that question. Do I feel completion? That's a work in progress because being raised at the altar of productivity, it's hard for me not to be. Plus, everywhere you go, people are like, what's your next book? And I'm like, I said to my dad when I was home, I was like, Dad, can I be done? Is that like, is it over yet? Like, he was like, yeah, it's over. It was funny because for those of you who know, my father my father kind of was the committee, but the irony is he's 93.
Mhm.
Now, when I have these voices, he's like, what are you talking about? Who cares if your book gets published? It's great. You don't need to do any of this. So it's just also a sign of
It
like
has something.
of age and how he just looks at it and he's like, you're great. You didn't ever need to do it. And then I was like, Dad, why didn't you tell me? You
Right.
know, but anyway, now I'm already screwed up. I'm thinking about my next book. Anyway,
The other
yeah.
thing also
Yeah.
is that I thought the relationship with your mother, especially around Danny,
Yeah.
was so powerful and
Mm,
beautiful.
thank
And it
you.
felt like
Thanks.
another string that ran throughout that was
Yeah.
really,
Thank
really so
you.
beautiful.
I
Really.
love my mom so much and she is the strongest person. And she, I don't know, God forbid, like we don't have to face anything like that as parents, God forbid, but she really showed that you can go through anything and she is still beautiful and positive and finds joy and like smokes a Cuban cigar with my dad every night, yelling at the TV to Trump. And, it's just, yeah.
Lisa.
So,
Yes.
So Lisa, and
so happy that Lisa and Jonathan are in the house.
I like in so many ways this is an ending. Is I keep thinking about how it's an ending, like you finished the book. You
Yeah.
you got the agent. You did Jesse's doing well, Danny's story is out. And I guess I'm wondering what's it feel like now? Like what's it not like really what's it feel like and what surprises you?
First of all, can I reveal you? This is Lucy. This is my running partner. And you're part of that answer because Lisa is an artist and was an art teacher for many years. Okay, sorry, I have to turn it on you. She's like, you're doing it. You're turning it around. No, but it's back to me too. She does this thing where she just creates things like Sam. I don't know if you guys, when you read in the book, like every day he's like making these things that there's no point to them and he doesn't film them and he just does them. And Lisa's that way. And she's just such a muse to me because she does it for the pure sake of the creativity of it. So I think that for me, I do have a sense of completion in one sense. And I also am thinking so much of the idea of like false gods, because I've said that, I don't remember who, but it's just so interesting that arrival fallacy, like so many of the things that I held as like, oh my God, if I ever got published in the New York Times, what about Oprah? If I got an agent, I've done these things. And yet it's like, I can feel how it doesn't sustain you. It just doesn't. I'm so sad to find that out. I thought it was all over. But no, I think what's good is that it does maybe bring you back to like, for people like me who are just, aren't going to rest, that feeling of like the meaning. So now that part's done, what is going to be the thing that really brings you meaning? And I have to say that Goat Hub on Instagram, for those of you, I'm like, these people who like follow these random, like the cat videos I've always been like, you people are wasting time. Why are you doing that? But then like Sam sent me some Goat Hub things and I'm like,
What's goat? What you said?
Goat Hub. There are people who have goats and they just like film the goats. And I was like up till 2 a.m, like going between, Travis and Taylor and Goat Hub, going like, this is such a waste of time, but it's so fun.
Right.
And then I was like, maybe that's the meaning of life. I don't even know.
Does
Okay.
anybody else have other things? Wait, I want to hear Goat Hub for you. Anybody else have things like that? Anybody? What's yours?
Like, yeah.
Goat Hub. Dog videos?
Oh, the
Donkeys?
donkey. Wait,
Anybody
and
else
Fred
have one?
Green is always like having these, what?
Raccoon.
Wait, like, how do you
Okay,
get a
good to know.
raccoon?
Okay.
Yeah.
Moji?
Or, hi, Julie.
Thanks for coming.
So
Lauren.
you talked in the beginning, when you opened, you said, hey, this is my story that I'm telling. It's not my brother's, it's not my parents, it's not Jesse's, it's my story. But the truth is that your story is also their story.
Right.
And how do you reconcile that as I think about,
Your
us being open,
children's.
my own,
Yeah.
vulnerability and being open, that also makes other people vulnerable and opens their
Right,
story.
right.
How do you reconcile?
So it was fortunately, unfortunately, it was easier for me because my brother is gone. And Jesse's here, but Jesse was in full support. I mean, if she wasn't, like, I never intended to write it for it to be a book. I was writing to just get out of like my own little private secret hell. And then I was going to be like, okay, and now I'll go back to be a writer, I'll go back to journalism. So, but then life kept unfolding in the way that it did, that I told the story. So it's easy for me. It's easier because the people in my life, all, including my older brother, who really, really, even more than my parents, like, this is not, but he was just right there. He came to our book event. He came in Kansas City. He stood at he sat in the top of the stairway. And then the moment I finished my last syllable, he was out the door. But the next morning he called me and he was just like, I'm so proud of you. It was so awesome. I'm so happy. And when I was like having my crisis before, like, I can't believe I'm doing that. Can't believe I'm putting you through this. And he was like, stop. This is your deal. This is your deal. So that was easy for me. I think, certainly if Jesse was like, Mom, I just wouldn't have done it, but I still would have written, but it would never have been public. Yeah.
Well, thank you again.
Yeah.
So the cover, the dragonfly.
Oh, thank you for
The
asking.
whole notion of signs. So I was really struck by the scene with the dragonflies up against the window and your mom's sort of recognition. It felt very palpable. It felt very conscious for her. And it seemed, and I hope I'm not misrepresenting your
Yeah.
process of sort of coming into that, but I'm curious where your sort of perhaps consciousness around signs.
Like
came
how I opened up, like how when I went from being like,
is it something you look for in your life?
Mhm.
It seemed to have found you. So
Yeah.
I'm curious how that's
Yeah.
changed your view or perspective or,
yeah, that's such a
something
great
you
question.
seek out.
Yeah. So I think what happened, and I've heard this from so many people now, like people who've lost people. So many people have said like, oh yeah, me too. Like I thought that was just all BS. But then when you lose someone, a lot of times people do, that happens. And I think that you're probably referring at the beginning, it was like really like a few days after Danny died and my mom was like, and and the day he died, there were it was like kind of inexplicable, but to me, it was like, who cares? Like, who cares? He's dead, And my mom was just immediately like, Danny, I hear him in the trees. And part of me was so comforted by that because I was like, this is a sign my mom is going to go on. And for me, like, that's all that mattered. But I said to Dave, like, I feel bad, but like, I don't care about the dragons. I don't make me like pretend that he's a dragon, But then what happened is that I couldn't, like, literally so often when I would think about him, they would come up. And I'm going to tell you this crazy story that happened, which I didn't say in the book. But wait, what time is it? So I don't want to.
Moshe's in charge of that.
Moshe. Okay. So I went to the first writing retreat and I went to two, but it was like the editor told me I ended up just in the book, it was one, but I went to two. So the first one was just like, find your voice and, whatever. But it was like my first sense of finding my voice again. And I hadn't planned to write a book, but there was a woman there who like she seized on me and she was like, do the second one with me. I think you can do it. I think you should do it. And I was like, really? Okay. I don't think I can do it, but all right. And then what you had to do in order to join the second retreat was have 30 pages, which to me was like, I wrote 30 pages in high school. It took me like 3 packs of cigarettes. It took like so much medicine, and but she really pushed me to do it. And so I was like, all right, I'll go to the writing trip. We'll see how it goes. So I spit out 30 pages. It was very difficult. And we were driving, it was in Denver, and we were driving on our way there. And she was like, Julie, I had a dream last night. And she was like, I dreamt about your book cover, and it was a white cover with a single blue dragonfly on it. And I was like, okay, Nancy, just can you just jinxed it. Like I don't think I'm going to write the book. And now you have to like, just, we're never talking. I mean, I really was just like, this is just too much pressure. It's enough that did it. I'm just here for the retreat. And we arrive at the hotel and we're checking in, and I look over the clerk's thing, and there is a painting that looks exactly like this. And it was like, oh my shit, now I have to write the book. I mean, but it was like, how could you? And so I contacted the artist, and he has a thing for dragonflies because of someone he lost, and I had him paint one, and I have it in our bedroom, and it was like one of my muses to carry me on. And as you read in the book, so many times it showed up. So I think I go back to what my mom says, like to me, like, that's the whole thing, psychics and mediums and whatever. It's like the province somewhere between like reason and hope for me. Well, I guess now I am a little bit of a believer, because I have to be, because I've just seen too much, and I've heard too much from people who have had similar experiences.
So I retract what I said before.
What?
Entertaining and inspiring is perfect, as you have been this afternoon.
Thank you
so much. I want to say a couple things. We've got to wrap up. Is that right? So a couple of things is that.
Thank you, Suzanne, for coming.
For you
Yeah.
and for anybody here, everything you've done and are until this point in your life is enough. You can do anything you want after this. And it doesn't mean life has to end. It's the opposite. It's that you've earned your place in this universe and in this world, as have you.
I love
So
that.
you can stop right now. And
Yay.
keep coming here in your flannels. Or you could go on and have your book made into a movie, and we'll watch the Academy Awards and all this kind of thing together. Whatever it is, there doesn't have to be another book. There doesn't have to be another anything. This is enough. And this is gorgeous. And you are perfect. And it is
Thank you,
enough.
Stacy.
And you're everything. It's everything. So whatever it is, Dayenu.
Thank you.
And I wish that for all of you as well.
Mm.
I want to end with one more thing. I think it was among the only Hebrew in the book. Maybe you said Kaddish. You said the word Kaddish. Ma'ayan ba'adama. I want to just end with that.
Yeah.
So can you just tell us what that is? And
So it was my mom, who's Israeli, and I was on the retreat, and I had a phone conversation with her like the first few days. And I said, Mom, it's so weird. Like I can write, and it's just scary. Like I just feel like I can write, but I just don't know if I'm going to be able to keep going. And she said something like, she said, I just notice how you go to things and you try things, and then you abandon them because you just sort of like, you're tending to other people's gardens, and you pick other people's flowers, and that satisfies you in the moment, but you're missing, you don't allow yourself to go down to the
to the well in the earth.
the well underneath. She said, there's a rushing spring underneath you, but it requires focus, and it requires space. Focus is hard for me. And it always feels better to be helping other people than to like be sitting with myself, always. I think for a lot of women, that's true. So anyway, it's like, we just are who we are. I think we just become more of it, but
We'll make you be nourished by that well. That is
thank
all.
you.
Well, may you be nourished.
Thank you.
so much.
Thank you all. Thank you all. Thank you guys. Oh my God. You guys, oh my God.
Thank you. Thanks for
Thank you so much. Thank you.